And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
What is up, everyone? You are listening to Shaping Success. I am your host, Wes Tankersley. Before we get to the episode, can you please do me a favor? Wherever you're listening to this, please give it a 5-star review, share it, like it. Help me to grow the show because that is what we are trying to do. Before we get into episode 34, which is with Andrew F. Carter, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a couple things. We had difficulty trying to get this thing off the ground. The audio quality is not really what I prefer for it to be, but we've wasted enough of Andrew's time. I really wanted to thank him for taking the time to be on the show. I've tried to correct it as much as I possibly can. There's not a whole lot I can do about the audio. So with that being said, I understand if you can't listen to the whole thing through, but please try and give it a chance and see if you can get some good information out of there. Andrew kind of has this rise from the ashes type of story. You know, life throws a lot of curveballs at you, and you know me, I always like to use a good baseball analogy because that is something that is very important to me. I love baseball, and I think that there's a lot of life lessons in that. So Andrew's had a lot of curveballs thrown at him. He was the product of two parents who, from a broken home, his dad was a pimp and his mom was actually a prostitute at one point, and he's a product of that. He's been through a ton. He's found a lot of passion. He's been in foster care. He's been in prison. He's had a few setbacks, but he's risen above that. He's growing his ministry. So if you do have the opportunity and are able to listen to the whole thing, I would really appreciate it. Give us a little feedback and share with Andrew that he moved you because he did move me quite a bit with the things that he does. If you haven't heard him on, you can check him out at andrewfcarter.com. He's on TikTok. He's on Instagram. He does 15-second prayers all the time. He used to do 1-minute motivation. So he's a really good motivating guy. And I hope that you can find a way to listen to the whole episode. That being said, let's get to Andrew F. Carter. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Hey, Wes, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate your patience. I think you're a little bit more patient than I am. It's been a little interesting trying to get this whole thing squared away over the last 3 weeks. Glad that you've been patient. I hope that this gives a powerful interview like you talked about.
Yeah, definitely. When it's throwing curveballs, man, all you can do is stay in the box and keep swinging. So here I am. I'm patient.
Yep. I appreciate it, man. We've talked a little bit a couple times here, and we talked about kind of your childhood and things like that. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about, you know, where you were born, how you grew up?
Yeah, most definitely. So I was born in Portland, faced quite a bit through my childhood years. Both of my parents were drug addicts. My mom struggled keeping a job. My dad was his career choice in life. I'm a prostitute for time. So growing up, I seen a lot of different things, a lot of dark places, moved around a ton. There was no stability. There was no consistency in my life. And
and so you ended up in foster care, it sounds like. When did that happen?
First time, I believe, I was about 12 years old, and I was put into a home for about 3 or 4 months. My mom was in rehab, trying to get her life together. And then the second time, I was in 7th grade. She went to prison for identity theft, and I spent about 18 months with my uncle. 18 months, actually, when I was about 14.
How did it play into your life? I know that, like we talked about, there's a lot of curveballs in that, and being raised by your parents is one of those things that a lot of us take for granted. We never do, but you've basically been kind of raised by different people throughout your life. How did that affect the way that you did things?
I think that was a very eye-opening experience for me. What it provided that I always lacked was consistency, discipline. There was structure, and what I found is when put in those constraints, I can excel. So it was like it shaped, my ideology and my philosophy that if I can create some amount of consistency, then I can excel. No discipline, kind of left to myself, and I struggled physically. Like I cheat anything. I really, the sky was the limit for me in foster care, and came in and like a direction that I could duplicate that environment, that I could spread my wings and fly.
So a little bit more consistency. It sounds like it was a little bit better for you to be in foster care because you were able to kind of have a little bit more structure.
Yeah, most definitely.
We talked a little bit. You kind of found God at a younger age, but you spent more time cultivating that relationship now did then. Can you talk a little bit about when you came to your faith and you found God?
Yeah. When I was 17 years old, it was the first time I actually heard Jesus Christ or Christianity, relationship with God. Growing up, I equated, Jesus to the Easter or as a savior or as God. So I gave my life to Christ. I wanted this girl, and her brother said that if I wanted to date her, then I had to be a Christian. And so I was like, whatever, I'll say your little prayer and I'll listen to your spiel. For that night, for years, I had this holder. I would, looking back, I would say it was the Holy Spirit. Brush it off to the side. When I was 23, I got really into the church. I started going for about 2 or 3 years. I was learning, how to potentially be a pastor in the future. The crazy part about that is after we had an evangelist come to town, and for a week he evangelized. And every night he would have a word for people. He would pull one person out of the stand and say, a message side over their life. A day went by, and I was hoping, praying to get some kind of a word, a touch from God, and nothing went by. We were fasting, we were praying, and on the last night, it was my night. He called me up from pre-COVID. He said, words of gold, and that you will minister. At the moment, it terrified me because I was 23. I had 2 kids. I didn't want to be a pastor or a minister at the time. I wanted to go back to school. And so I ended up doing that. I actually, a couple of weeks, I actually left church. I stopped attending because that calling on my life was it was so big. It was scary to where I'm at now. I'm now I'm an ordained minister, and I speak to millions of people. So prophecy came true over time, but I just kind of took the long way around to get there.
Kind of took a different path after that too, right? So you ended up in prison, and then you got out, and now you're on the path that you're on now. Can you kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So after I left church, I decided I was going to go to school, and I got a scholarship to play basketball at Lynn Benton. And so I played for 2 years there and went to play a little bit at Western Oregon. So I ended up earning 2 degrees. And when I was done, I started a business. And behind the scenes, everything was really good there. I was living the American dream. I had this that was making, just shy of $250,000 a year because I opened a gym. I had 2 college degrees. I was the kid who had kind of come from nothing. I had pulled myself up from my bootstraps and started to achieve and reach this level of success. But behind the scenes, I was I would take steroids, performance-enhancing drugs. When I exercised, I would work out so hard that I would take pain pills at night just to sleep. I didn't really battle with alcohol or hard drugs or anything like that, but I would use them socially. But like I said, I was also, in an abusive relationship. It was a very environment that we had created, me and my wife at the time. Over the years, it all kind of built up, and erupted. And one evening, I actually committed this heinous crime and got myself in trouble and ended up spending 18 months in prison and losing everything.
You had already found. You were kind of trying to figure out where your place was at the time in prison. There wasn't really this epiphany or anything like that, like you would think that there would have been in prison because it was already. How did your time in prison kind of shape where you are today?
It's funny. A lot of guys, I can only speak from experience. I've seen a lot of guys find God while they're in prison. But my experience was complete opposite of that. When I was there, I was so angry and my heart was hardened. I was so frustrated. I had the first, college degree. My marriage at the time was the longest. I had my own business. So I was so mad that I had lost all of that. And it was nobody else's fault but my own. But I was so angry. So my time there, I spent reading and coming up with business plans and just like really sharp myself mentally and physically, working, preparing myself for a comeback. So I started everything. My goal was to get vaccine and rebuild my life essentially with no thought about it at that time. So when I came home, even then I didn't just like go back to serving God. I spent a good year just like finding myself, dating around, part of a little bit, an online social media platform, building my online business, putting myself in the win.
A little bit about like your online business and things like that. So you started trying to build that thing. Is this where you started like the coaching and things like that, or did that come after when you started to decide that you better think about the path that you're on?
Yeah, that kind of trickled over from before I went to prison. So I owned a gym, and so a lot of online training. I was putting out motivational content and inspiration. We used to call it a minute of motivation. I was kind of sharpening my tool at the time, like preparing myself for this. So when I came home, that's when I started the online training. So I was seeing a shift in trends where, brick and mortar gyms are at war with like online training. And I wanted to have my hand in. So I started to the brick and mortar to online training, nutrition and exercise, workout programs. I wanted to be able to reach more than just the local community to really build my clientele.
When you started doing this, you were in prison in Oregon, correct? Is that where you were at? And then you moved to where you currently reside?
I moved down here a couple months ago in July. Yeah.
You're in LA, right? That's where you're at now?
Yeah.
Since then, you started kind of a ministry. When I first saw you, I saw you on TikTok, and it was kind of a couple different things the first thing that in mind was the Oregon State, because I'm a big Oregon State fan. I'm a fan. Love Pat Casey. She's not the coach anymore started like, this guy really relates. He's really positive. This guy has a great message. And what I started noticing, because you just 15 seconds of prayer.
Yeah.
When did this switch come from that motivation to the prayer, and when start putting more trust into your faith?
After that first year of being in prison, I was kind of on that same path of success. I was doing well financially. I was traveling. I was, I was achieving again, but there was something missing. This time around, I recognized, because I wasn't numbing the pain with drugs and alcohol, I was a lot more open, but I could see that I was seeing something, a key component. And I had people around that would encourage me to get back into my faith. And I dabbled with it a little bit. I went to church here and there, and I would pray. But I started a podcast with one of my friends. She's actually my photographer. And when we would talk on this podcast, she would speak openly about her faith. It just kind of shake my head, because I told her, I've always been taught that you don't mix business, politics, and religion. You just don't talk about those things. You lose clientele. And I feel like she challenged me a bit more open about it. And that her thing was that God will put the people in front of you who need to hear your message. And if you talk about God and people leave, he'll replace that, if I'm faithful to that mission. And so I took a leap of faith. And one evening, I was kind of going through it, not having a great day. And shared my testimony in a 15-second video on TikTok. And that evening, I think I went to bed and maybe had about 200 followers or so. And shorter, my DMs were filled with messages and notifications. I had over 15,000 followers. My video testimony had gone viral. And so it was kind of at that moment, like my heart opened up, my ears. It was just kind of like that epiphany of the prophecy that was over my life. I had struggled and strived so long with this online platform, talking to this in the bottom. But the first time I opened up about spirituality and with God, it kind of explodes. And it was that awakening. It was just like, okay, this is exactly what he was talking about. This is the time. Follow your heart. And so from that point forward, I just started and get church and pray the Bible. And as I did, it just became more and more clear that this is what I've gone through. I've gone through all of this purpose and the pain, that there was a message that I was put here to share, a message of hope, encouragement, and just love, and trying to help people.
But it led to a couple more things too, because now you're speaking in churches, and where else? Where else are you at? I know you're speaking in churches. Where has this led you?
So at this point, I just finished a 31-day devotional that I'm authoring. I started a publishing company as well, a Christian-based publishing company. So I'm writing, traveling, at schools, at churches. I was at a youth camp back in August, and it's opened up to a lot of different like online conferences, podcasts, interviews, different things like that. Just being able to share my story with people. But there are so many doors have opened up. There's different sponsorships, and and things like that. It's just like, it's mind blowing. Every day there's a new opportunity to share my story on different platforms, whether it's YouTube or Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. It's just all over the place. It's
kind of crazy to decide that you're not in control and you give that to the higher power and you're able to see, the fruits of that and how when putting your faith in God, you have gives you those gifts that, that you never knew that you could get. So that's great to hear that's been that way. So you do a lot of coaching. You're also a trainer, correct? So you're doing a little bit of mind coaching through that. And is it faith-based coaching as well, or just mindset and training and things like that?
Yeah. So in the meantime, since then, like I said, I'm an ordained minister. I'm doing a lot of studying towards becoming a pastor at some point. And so everything I'm doing is Christ. So I do have mindset training, but my focus is on like holistic. I want mind, body, and soul. So my focus is around what the gospel says in the Bible.
I'm putting in faith and hoping that, it ends up the way that you're supposed to. Or is it kind of a combination of the two? What's going on there?
So right now, I mean, I really stopped putting out fitness content. Everything has been focused about spreading the word and hope and encouragement. And so the training business is going okay. I'm getting people who are just kind of going through my stuff and ordering stuff online. So, I mean, it's putting food on the table. God's definitely providing through that channel. But we'll see, probably within the next year or so, I'll phase out of the actual fitness scene. I was in the fitness scene for, 16 years or so. And so I'm ready to retire that in my life and use it as, self-therapy and just have a lot more serving God.
That, we take this crooked path to where we're trying to get, and we make a bunch of stuff along the way, and it sounds like you've found where it's an inspiring story. I think I told you this before, but it's great to hear that someone can, you kind of came out of the pit of hell, really. I mean, you've been through so much, and you're inspiring so many people. So continue to do that. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show. Before we get to the final question here, can you tell me a little bit about where we can find you? If we're trying to find you, where is the best place to find you? Social media, website, where can we find Andrew?
Yeah, so andrewfcarter.com is my website, and I go by the same handle on Instagram. I go by that handle on Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, and
find Andrew on andrewfcarter.com or anywhere else under the same name. So we get to the final question. This week's final question sponsor is the One Movement. It is driven by passion, by culture. Check out One Auto Movement at oneautomovement.com. So Andrew, this question that we ask every single guest is the same. If you had to define it, how would you define the shape of your success?
The shape of my success would be just being better than I was yesterday. I'm not in competition with anybody else. I keep my eyes on the prize, which is for salvation, and that is my motivation. That is my focus, 100%. The success comes from any way that would be a little bit better than I was yesterday.
So setting and following them and doing better than you did the day before. That's a great goal. That's a great definition of success. I want to thank you for taking the time to be on the show. Hey, I just wanted to say thank you if you have tuned in this long. It was a little bit difficult to get that recording edited where I needed it to be. I know that it was a little cut up, but there was a great message there. Thanks to Andrew for working through that. It's been very tough to get him on, and I just wanted to say thank you. If you can share this, like it, review it, follow Andrew wherever you can find him, andrewfcarter.com, to get more great content from him. And I wanted to say thank you again to One Auto Movement for sponsoring this show. And hopefully you guys have a great day. Tune in next time for more Shaping Success.